Assembling of CPU. Tools. Magnetic tip screwdriver. It is recommended to use multi-bits magnetic screwdriver as it holds the screw post unscrewing it. Make sure to use appropriate bit-in screwdriver based on type of head on screw. Precaution. Before handling electronics component or device, it is must to remove static charge of the body. To remove static charge, you can use static band on wrist and insert the ground pin in any electric plug ground hole, then after switch on the plug. Switch off the plug and remove static band. Now static charge is removed from body. In case if you don't have static band, touch any metal object which is grounded. It will also remove static charge from body. While using screwdriver, make sure tip of screwdriver should not touch on PCB as it may create scratch which can cause permanent damage to PCB. It is always better to keep the devices on dry, clean and plain surface away from any magnetic field and place PCBs like motherboard, expansion card on anti-static sheet to avoid any damage. Do not try to over-tightening of any screws. Procedure. Attach processor on processor slot. Apply heat sink paste on processor properly as it acts as lubricant between process and heat sink. First press the processor slot lock lever slightly and then pull it slightly away from slot and now lift it upward till it unlock. Now lift the processor slot lock flap and then after align the processor on processor slot by matching processor and slot notch. Now place the processor on slot. Close the processor slot lock flap and then after lock the processor slot lock lever properly. Attach processor fan on processor and fix all 4 levers on motherboard. Align processor fan all 4 levers on the holes provided on motherboard. Place the processor fan on processor. Press all 4 levers slightly so that it goes inside fixing holes on motherboard. Press 2 levers simultaneously for better alignment. Check the direction mark mentioned on top of all 4 screw notches. One by one, tighten all 4 screws on lever using minus bit of screwdriver in single rotation to lock the lever on motherboard. Now processor fan is fixed on processor. Attach motherboard on cabinet base plate. Make sure there should not be any cable on base plate of cabinet. In case you find any cable, place it outside of base plate. Hold the motherboard from both sides close to middle portion. Make sure your finger should not touch components on motherboard. Align the motherboard in such a way that I/O ports are on the side of cabinet I/O ports slot. Place the motherboard on base plate and slightly slide it towards cabinet I/O port slot in such a way that motherboard I/O port slots get fixed on cabinet I/O port slot. Now align all the motherboard fixing hole on base plate. Identify and tighten all the screws on motherboard one by one. By fixing screw head on magnetic screwdriver tip. Attach CD-ROM drive in the cabinet. Cabinet provide multiple slots and we can use any one slot to connect CD-ROM drive. Insert CD-ROM drive in on top bay of add-on slot from front side of cabinet. Align the screw holes. Now engage the screws by few rotation. Do not fully tighten the screws. Place the finger on front side of cabinet flap and align it with the flap position. Tighten all the screws. Attach floppy disk drive in the cabinet. Insert floppy disk drive in floppy disk drive slot from front side of cabinet. Align the screw holes. Now engage the screws by few rotation. Do not fully tight the screws. Place the finger on front side of cabinet flap and align it with the cabinet body position. Tighten all the screws. Attach hard disk drive in the cabinet. Insert hard disk drive by keeping the PCB side in lower position. In any one of the available bay from inner side of cabinet. Align the screw holes and tighten all the screws. Now turn the cabinet and one by one tighten all the screws on CD-ROM drive, floppy disk drive, hard disk drive. Attach expansion card. If CPU is having any expansion card, align card on any one of the PCI slot. Now hold the expansion card front top portion and push it slightly in the slot. Now align expansion card screw hole with cabinet screw hole. Tighten the screw. Insert RAM module. Place the RAM module on top of RAM slot and align the notch on RAM module and RAM slot. Insert RAM module in the slot and press it slightly by placing thumb on top position at each end. Make sure RAM module should not be loose in slot and it is properly locked. In case you have multiple RAM module, do the same to insert another RAM module. Connect all front panel connectors. Read the diagram comes with motherboard, or if you have prepared the diagram, refer your diagram and accordingly connect. Connect power switch connector. Connect power LED connector. Make sure about positive and negative pin. Connect reset switch connector. Connect hard disk LED connector. Make sure about positive and negative pin. Connect internal speaker connector. Connect USB connectors. Make sure connector is aligned on connector pin on motherboard. Connect audio connectors. Make sure connector is aligned on connector pin on motherboard. Connect all the power connectors by pushing it gently in the motherboard connector slot. Align 20 pins power cable connector notch on the power cable connector slot on motherboard. Now insert connector in the motherboard power cable connector slot. Align 4 pins power cable connector notch on the power cable connector slot on motherboard. Now insert connector in the motherboard power cable connector slot. Connect CPU fan power cable by aligning the cable notch on motherboard power connector notch. Connect hard disk power cable to hard disk power cable slot. Connect CD-ROM drive power cable to CD-ROM power cable slot. Connect floppy disk drive power cable by aligning the cable connector on drive connector slot. Connect all the data cables. Connect hard disk SATA cable, one end to the motherboard and another end on the hard disk drive SATA cable slot. Connect 40 pins CD-ROM IDE flat cable, one end on the motherboard IDE slot and another end by aligning connector notch on the drive. Connect 34 pins floppy drive flat cable, one end on the motherboard slot and another end on floppy drive. Attach cabinet panels. Align left panel on the cabinet. Slightly push the panel. Align the whole of panel and cabinet. Tighten the screws on panel. Align right panel on the cabinet. Slightly push the panel. Align the whole of panel and the cabinet. Tighten the screws on panel. Connect external I or O devices. Connect network cable. Connect mouse cable. Connect monitor cable on VGA port and tighten the screws. Connect power inlet and outlet cable in CPU. Connect keyboard. This is a PS2 keyboard. Make sure connector is well aligned with the port or it may damage pins in the connector. This is PS2 mouse slot. You can use it to connect PS2 mouse. Assembling process of computer is completed.